When an anime watcher thinks of a good studio, a few might come to mind, such as Ufotable, JC Staff, Studio Bones, WIT, but none is more infamous for their wholesome and beautiful works than Kyoto Animation, or KyoAni. They made one of the most iconic animes of the 2000s with the Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya, then they changed millions of lives with Clannad. The studio moved on then to start the moe revolution in otaku culture with K-On! They made the entire world cry with a silent voice, and most recently they touched hundreds of hearts with Violet Evergarden. On top of their fantastic catalog, they also have a very humble beginning. The studio was created in 1981 by Yoko Hata and Hideaki Hata. Yoko originally worked for Mushi Production, which is most famous for its work Ashita no Joe from 1970. Her love of animation pursued into her new life, and after she moved to Kyoto, she decided to attempt making her own studio. Funnily enough, the first few animators for the studio were her neighboring housewives. Flash forward like 40 years, and we live in a day and age now where Japanese animators are horrendously overworked and hospitalized due to it, such as what happened with Wonder Egg Priority from Cloverworks, or Attack on Titan from MAPPA, or the Spider Isekai. I don't know too much about it, I just know that there were some really bad hospitalizations for it. They are also usually paid terribly. A good, more recent example is how the Chainsaw Man trailer allegedly was paid $2. However, KyoAni is an outlier among these studios. Not only do they pay their animators actual salaries instead of making them individual contractors, they give them lots of benefits and routine breaks to rejuvenate themselves so they don't get overworked. The studio is often remarked as one of the most progressive in the business, even hiring women more than other studios thanks to good old Yoko. Yoko and her husband actually still overlook and take care of the studio to this day, nearly 40 years later. That's so impressive. They even established the KyoAni School, which is a studio completely dedicated to training new animators and hiring them directly into the studio. KyoAni has been a gold standard for the community, a shining beacon, if you will. They gave Japanese animation studios hope for better treatment, as well as hundreds of faces across the world hope in their stories. You can talk to any member of the anime community, and odds are they will have had a very good experience with at least one of their shows. I myself have a pretty strange relationship with Beyond the Boundary, and I nearly love every single one of the creations of theirs that I have seen. The studio was especially on the rise after Violet Evergarden, and they appeared as if they were on top of the anime world. That was until a terrible summer day.
We are learning more about that horrific arson attack.
Shocking an animation studio in Kyoto.
Fire to an anime studio in Kyoto.
Attack at an animation studio.
Worst such attack in Japan in decades.
On July 20th, 2019, Kyoto Animation was torched in one of the worst acts of terror in Japan since 2001. Shinji Oba walked into the building with a gas canister, and then he proceeded to light the place ablaze. The arsonist was apparently angry with the studio for stealing his work, but KyoAni later said themselves that they had no idea what he was talking about. 34 people died in the fire, and 35 people were injured. Among the deceased were Yasuhiro Takimoto, the director of Full Metal Panic, Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, and Haruhi Suzumiya. Yoshiji Kigami, key animator for works such as Akira and Grave of the Fireflies before he came to Kyoto Animation, and Tyoka, the K-On! Movie, Free, and a silent voice once he joined Kyoto Animation. Color designer Naomi Ishida, known for Haruhi, Hyoka, and a silent voice, and Futoshi Nishiya, who was the animation director for Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid, Haruhi, Clannad, Lucky Star, Air, Nichijou, Free, Beyond the Boundary, and character designer for a silent voice. In the course of merely a few hours, we had lost some of the most prevalent names in the industry, and a studio filled to the brim with hope for other animation studios and happiness for their workers was gone. Some of the works for the studio were saved due to being backed up in a server outside of the building, but the future of the studio became shrouded in mystery as fans across the world mourned the lives of those that were lost. Despite the extreme amount of suffering the studio went through, KyoAni did manage to persevere. Over the last few years, they would continue to release some of the movies they had managed to finish in time occasionally, such as the Violet Evergarden movie that did incredibly well. They even established a new location and began hiring new workers. But besides this, the studio was very silent, and a lot of the old animators left the studio after the Violet Evergarden movie finished. Everything revolving around their future was unknown and uncertain to the public, and no one knew what they had planned to do next, or if they even would do anything next. However, that all changed in July of 2020. Miss Kobayashi's Dragon Maid Season 2 came out, marking the first seasonal release from Kyoto Animation in almost 3 years. Kyoto Animation has returned. Dragon Maid was a show that originally took the world by storm in 2017. The show was visually gorgeous and brimmed with life, at the time being probably one of the most dynamically animated slice of life shows. It even managed to tackle some really interesting topics that most anime don't even try to talk about, such as a realistic blooming lesbian couple, which is weird calling a dragon and a human a realistic couple, but they still managed to do it very well. We see gradually over the first season as the one-sided relationship between Toru and Kobayashi evolves, and they develop a parenting dynamic for Kana almost as if they were a real family. The show also preaches to accept anyone despite their differences in backgrounds and or appearances, and it's fun to watch the dragons just adjust to normal human life. It's extremely interesting how such a wholesome slice of life show about dragons and humans can tackle such serious topics in a way that doesn't feel invasive, and it does so in a very casual and approachable manner. Because of all of these reasons, it absolutely exploded with popularity. Everywhere you went there was talk of Dragon Maid or cosplayers for it, and that has persisted for 5 years. You could still hear people gushing about this show, or you'll occasionally see Kana in TikTok or YouTube or things like that. We had been aware that a second season for the show had been in the works, but due to crucial members for Dragon Maid having been victims to the fire, such as Yasuhiro Takimoto, the future of the series became unknown. No one knew if we would ever get a second season. That's why it's so nice to say that Kyoto Animation has persisted, and now it's here. It's actually here. And it's fucking fantastic. The series in its first 2 episodes already heavily addressed 2 serious things such as prejudice and acceptance in such a beautiful way. This is on top of the fact that the animation now feels even stronger than it was previously, with some very impressive fight scenes between the dragons and the world feeling even more alive than it did before. Not only does it have all of these new goodies, but it also still manages to capture the same essence of wholesomeness that the show had previously. The show has come back in swinging colors. But the series having a new season is also a rallying cry for the studio's return. The opening begins with a sequence that is an homage to one of their earlier works, Nichijou, and even later parts of the opening are similarly animated to Juniboyo's opening to signify that the studio we know and love is back. The show production uses the late art director's artboards and expands on them further, and follows the late director's vision for the first episode, even going as far to cite him as the series corrector in the post-credits. They could have halted production for the show indefinitely, but they were determined to fully realize the work of their friends. Kyoto Animation is metaphorically passing the torch of their old staff to the newer generation of waiting-to-be-born legends of the medium, proudly screaming their new studio message: inspiration for the future. Dragon Maid S as a whole embodies this message so heavily, from the opening to the animation to all of the love and care you can feel in this show. The first 2 episodes, I'm serious, are just oozing with passion, and I love it. But not only that, you can really feel it in some of the new commercials they've dropped, which were entirely given to new animators for the studio. I believe even the Dragon Maid miniseries Mini Dora was also given entirely to new members. I really recommend you go and watch these fully if you haven't already, because these commercials and even the miniseries are oozing with passion. Ishihara Tatsuya, the new director for Dragon Maid S, has stated, quote, "For new talent to develop, you need to give those up-and-coming creators an opportunity. The feeling that they're putting something out there for people to enjoy." This could not hold more true for the direction the studio is heading in now. In the matter of a few months, we went from a future of uncertainty revolving around the studio to an atmosphere of hope and looking to the future. Kyoto Animation, despite the pain they've gone through, continues to inspire and move forward despite all odds put against them. The era in the studio was looking scary after the fire and old animators left, but the new faces of the studio are quickly dispelling any original worries with their fantastic artwork and creations they have already given us. Watching the first episode of Dragon Maid S made me realize how much I miss this studio, and I'm so unbelievably happy that they're back. Their plans for the future right now are pretty secretive, but I don't really care. The beacon of hope for Japanese animation is back. From the bottom of my heart, thank you for everything you've done, Kyoto Animation, and welcome back. We all missed you. A special thank you to our patron Matt. Thank you for supporting me and supporting this video, and I will see you guys all in the next one.